Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where aspiring and experienced matchmakers come to sharpen their skills, grow their businesses, and elevate the matchmaking industry. Your host is Arlene Washburn, an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and industry innovator. Let's dive in.
I am so excited for today's conversation, which is so timely. We are joined by Naheed Oberfeld, a powerful mindset coach and certified EFT tapping practitioner. And first of all, she's known as the mindset maven, and I want to understand exactly what does mindset coaching mean to you, and how does it differ from traditional coaching?
Well, first and foremost, Arlene, I'm so glad to be here and have this conversation with you. Mindset to me is everything. So I came from a very traditional background of, let's talk about careers. Like, we're going to focus on careers. So I went from a undergrad psychology degree, but they don't teach you anything about mindset and psychology, by the way. And then from there, I jumped into a very analytical, logical type of background with working in finance. And you think that everything is very laid out and logical. Like, if I do X, then I'm going to receive Y. And if I do receive Y, then I will either move up in my career, or I'm going to feel better about myself, whatever it is. You feel like there are all these very external steps you need to take, and then life will magically become better. And how many of us have tried that and life has not magically become better? And that's when I realized that the common denominator is your mindset. If you don't change how you especially view yourself, but also view life and the situations around you, if you're going to feel like a victim like I did for so long, then you are just going to keep recreating that victim type of experience, and nothing's going to get any better. So I hope that kind of helped answer a little bit of that question.
Absolutely. And it's something that I really think should be taught in grammar school. I mean, from the moment you go into these institutions, they should be talking about mindset because it has such an impact on every aspect of your life. And then as you start to figure out that, oh, it's my mindset that's keeping me stuck in whatever it is that I'm doing. And we'll get into that topic in a second because we're talking about, career transitions and things like that. It takes years sometimes for people to realize that it's the belief system and their mindset about certain things. And some people have a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And so, that's a game changer because that really propels you to be able to do anything. It's like you're unstoppable when you have the mindset that, yes, I can. And you just keep moving forward. And maybe you don't land exactly where you thought you would, but you might end up in a better place. So I'm really excited about this topic because you and I were talking offline about everything that's going on in the world around us, particularly in the US, and how many people are losing their jobs and finding themselves in this weird place of like, what's next. And we both went through that, and my transition into the work that I do today, that was almost 15 years ago, was based on a layoff. And to me, that was like a blessing. To be honest, I didn't know it at the time. I was miserable. I was happy for a moment, and then I was like, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills? I'm a single mom. I have a 4-bedroom house, driving a Mercedes, and my daughter, it's just my daughter and we don't have, I don't have anyone to turn to for money or whatever. And that was my entree into entrepreneurship. But what are your thoughts? And I know you've gone through something similar, not quite the same, but similar.
Yeah, so I'd like to actually start by sharing a short story. So I used to be a Toastmaster. For those of you who don't know Toastmasters, that's where you go to learn public speaking and how to be a good communicator, basically, more than anything. And I remember the Toastmasters has competitions at various different levels, starting with your club and then going all the way up to the international level. So I'd gone into one of these competitions, and I remember meeting one of the other contestants who was going to be competing for the same competition that I was in. And he was talking about him being a 20-year or maybe 30-year Toastmaster veteran. He's won every competition he's ever walked in. He's never lost a single thing. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, how could I possibly win against him? I'd been in Toastmasters, what, maybe 2 or 3 years at that point. And in my head, I started losing even before we had the competition. And that's when I told myself, wait a second, I'm a mindset coach. I need to change how I think about this. And while in the moment, I couldn't come out and say, oh, yes, I'm absolutely going to win this, I'm going to rock this, that's not where my subconscious was focused, right? I couldn't say something my subconscious was not going to agree on. So I came up with something different. I said, somebody has to win this competition, and why can't it be me? That one simple thing completely changed how I viewed this competition. And we had to actually prepare. So, this competition, you prepare on the spot, nothing that's given to you ahead of time. And so, we have 5 minutes to prepare. And I was like, you know what? I need to buckle down. And my mindset completely switched to, instead of how am I going to lose, it was more like, oh, I might actually win if I take these steps. And you won't believe it. I actually won. I beat this guy. And it all started with my belief in myself because I didn't lose the game before I even started the game, so to speak. And I learned that after what, 40 years? So, talking about decades of not being taught this in school, we're taught the opposite in school. We're taught that if you study hard and you work hard, only then are you going to be successful, right? And oftentimes life isn't like that. Oftentimes people who are who succeed aren't necessarily the smartest or the brightest or the most hardworking, but they have a mindset that they deserve it. And we, on the other hand, lack that. And that's how I felt when I quit my job. So I didn't, so I quit my job during the financial crisis, which was probably the worst time for a finance person to quit. And I had to work on my mindset to say, what do I deserve? What am I worthy of? And then it took a good 10 years for me to figure that one out because I struggled so much.
It's really interesting, but I think the mindset. So, okay, just similar situation. I want to tell a little story because of the way that I grew up with a single mom who relied on me to translate for her. And then I, became like this little adult dealing with
Mhm.
paperwork and doing all this stuff. I felt like I grew up with a lot of resilience because I didn't really have anybody to turn to. It was very isolating and lonely at the same time because I almost always felt like I was on an island by
Mhm.
myself and I had to figure it out. But that mindset of you have to figure it out really propelled me and pushed me forward, even without, let's say, the degrees that other people had or, the experience or whatever. I was always put in a situation of sink or swim. And
Yeah.
I always rose to this leadership position. But I think that happened to me because I was almost groomed to be that way in the way that I grew up. And unfortunately, there's some people, or I should even say that because I was raised this way, when I raised my daughter, I wanted to take away all her decisions, not because I didn't want her or she wasn't capable, but because I felt I don't want to do this to my daughter. I don't want her to have to feel responsible for everything. And I overcorrected, and it kind of made her a little bit insecure, even though she's brilliant, way smarter than me or whatever. And so I took away that ability for her to figure it out on her own, which was a big mistake in my part. And, I work every day to try to fix it. But my point is that, for me, necessity was the mother of invention. But there are so many people out there that don't have resilience at all. And when they see themselves in these situations, either, you get into that victim mentality or you just struggle for years and years because you tell yourself that you're not worthy, that you're not capable, and all of this stuff. And it's really sad, because you can come out of that. And I love that the work that you're doing because that's exactly what you're helping people do.
Yeah, and just to kind of, well, first and foremost, I think you are a great mom. I think everything that moms do is to be able to help their children. So I think you did a great job. And I will say what what was beneficial, even though at the time was not for you, didn't seem like it, you had no choice. You had to figure it out. Now, I think about me and me coming out of my time at Ernst and Young. I had a savings account that I was trying to build up to buy a house, and I completely depleted that over those 10 years because I wasn't in the, well, fear was definitely high and I wanted to earn a living and I didn't know how. This was during the recession, hard to get a job, all the rest of that. But the unfortunate part was that I had this safety net, this pad, and it was only when money ran out when I thought to myself, wait a second, whatever I've been doing is the wrong thing. I need to shift it, I need to change it. And I think that that's what tends to happen. One is we don't have the inner belief in ourselves. And the second is we hyper focus on one option. I was really looking only for traditional corporate role type of positions. It didn't even occur to me that there could be anything else out there. And a person who I sort of call an advisor, she kept telling me that she said, Naheed, you have to think more broadly. At that time, actually, I was looking for a position and in at USAID, part of the US government. And I was like, well, what's bigger than the US government? What's more broad than that? She's like, no, you're not thinking big enough. And that's why I thought that this conversation is so important. When we're in a tight situation, our focus becomes really, really narrow. That's the time when we really need to expand our view to say, what else is out there? What else could be a good fit for me? And it took me a very long time to figure that out. And I think that if somebody's listening to this and they have a little bit more permission to say, okay, what can I start exploring that might be a good option or a good fit that I would never have considered under other circumstances?
Yeah, it's amazing how the brain loves certainty, and change is inherently uncertain. But there's also this false security that people have. I mean, you mentioned the USAID. How many people were told by their parents, hey, go get a government job, you'll have job security? And I don't mean to laugh because I know people are struggling right now, but it's just a false security that people, again, it's a mindset that you think you're
Mhm.
thinking something, but that's not necessarily accurate. And quite frankly, any time that you have a job, it is completely out of your control whether or not you can sustain that job,
Yeah,
because anyone in a leadership position can make a decision and you're gone. The days of people spending, like my husband retired after 35 years in working for UPS in management, and that doesn't seem to happen that much anymore. People are jumping around from job to job, and or the jobs are leaving you. And I think a lot of people who could do great in the field of entrepreneurship are really afraid because they think that there's more security in having a job. And I'm not trying to say that everybody should be an entrepreneur.
right.
God forbid, right? But it is a viable thing for so many people.
Yeah, and I think many entrepreneurs have that sort of inner calling. They know when it's there, right? I mean, I think that's what you were also talking about. You knew that that was going to be your next step. And while it is not the easiest path, I don't think working a traditional job is easy either. I think it wears you down in different ways. But people need to realize that there are options out there, and if it's calling you, then why not at least explore it? If not, well, if you're unemployed, then that's a good place to start. But even if you're employed but still have this calling, start exploring these other things, because eventually you're going to realize that you missed so much time when you could have been doing something that felt really good for you. I mean, that's how I felt. It took me 10 years to get my business up and running only because of fear. No other reason. It was the fear that stopped me.
And what did you do to change that, to change the fear essentially? Like what changed for you in your mindset that really propelled you into finally getting that business going in the way that it needed to be?
I wouldn't say that the fear changed and then I got into business. I would say it was actually the opposite. So I had applied for my final job position and didn't get it. And one day I just like burst into tears. I was going to be getting married soon. I had no job prospects. And I thought I needed to do something different. I mean, it was back to that something was not working. Whatever I was trying was not working. And I thought to myself, I have skills in me. Let me at least explore the skills. And for me, back then, I've always been very interested in metaphysical stuff, interested in personal growth and how to apply metaphysics to personal growth. And I decided I was just going to start uh, hosting these meetups. That's how I started. They were free meetups that people would come in and they would start learning about personal development. And from there, I started taking the next steps. And that's how I worked through my fear because I had to take the first steps, even though the fear was really high. But sitting around was not an option anymore. Something needed to be done.
And, really that's what bravery is. It's not that the fear goes away, is that despite the fear, you're going to do it anyway. And
Yeah.
you're going to try so that you can see something different, a different outcome. When I was in the situation, there was a lot of fear because I had some savings, but I had fixed expenses that I couldn't change right away. And I really have no idea why I was let go. And when I remember that day feeling like this is, initially, right? Initially, I remember driving away from this place and it was an hour away from home. And it was a very stressful job. And I thought, ah, the relief, like, oh,
Mhm.
this is great. I remember driving, I had a convertible, the sun was shining down on me, and I felt like, oh, the angels were carrying me through. And then as I got closer to home, I started to feel this shame because I had never been let go before. And then, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills? And, and I started dating my now husband at that time. And I remember thinking, you know what? I had this idea in my head for over 5 years to become a matchmaker. And I had seen a show on TV and I'm like, I can so do this. And then I went to a matchmaker and went through their process and I knew that I could do it better. In my mind, I felt like this to me, it was a joke. I'm like, oh, I
Mhm.
could totally improve this, right? So I finally said to myself, why not? Why not now? Like,
Mhm.
just try it, Arlene. And I kind of created this whole thing in my head. And within weeks, I had a website up and running. But I was moving quickly because I knew time was of the essence, considering that it's either you're going to do this and it's going to work, or you better go get a job because who's going to pay your bills,
Mhm.
And it really was, I mean, I've never looked back, and now I no longer do matchmaking. I teach it, but it was like the best decision of my life. And I feel like being laid off gave me permission, which is the big thing that I find with most people, that they don't give themselves permission. So the universe provides, talk about metaphysics, right?
Right.
The universe is like, this is what you want, here you go. And that's how I got into this industry. But the last thing I want to say, because I want to turn this over to you, is that you would be surprised how so many of the skills that I had gained over 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry in various positions, operations, sales, finance, this, that, and the other. Anyway, all of that served me in my business. And I was able to hit the ground running probably faster than a lot of people with a learning curve into entrepreneurship because there is a difference. But how was it for you?
Well, so for me, one of the things that I really focused on while I was working with clients, so I work with a very specific technique. I think I should start over there. It's called emotional freedom technique. And most people, if you've heard of it, you either know it as tapping or EFT. And I was my first client because I knew that if I was going to work with people on their emotional blocks, I have to first uncover and release my own blocks because otherwise I'm seeing the world through this filter, right? Whatever these limiting beliefs are, not only am I seeing events showing up for me through that filter, but I'm seeing other people through that filter. And I didn't want to do that. It wouldn't be the responsible thing to do as I'm working with clients. So, first and foremost, I had to work on my own emotions and all those fears, doubts, and insecurities. And the first thing for me that I learned is all these things that I thought were real, that was, I'm really not this smart, I'm really not anything meaningful, or, I don't have a purpose in life, was old messages that my teachers, when I was really young, they were the ones that kept reinforcing it. I was not smart enough, I was not good enough, I was not ever going to be successful. And what tapping helped me do is help me identify the source of that message, which was not me. Turns out I'm really not that dumb as they claimed I was and I believed to be afterwards. But once you release those old emotions, then something really interesting happens. Then you allow synchronicity to bring to you the right opportunities. And that's the hardest thing for my clients who are all, very type A, very hardworking, driven professionals. They keep asking, like, what do you mean I just allow the opportunities to show up? But that's exactly what happens. And that's what I want to kind of share about job searches as well. When you take a step back and you're not looking at it in very myopic eyes, and they're very real fears. How do you pay a mortgage? You have family to feed, you have health insurance that you have lost, right? But as soon as you take a big step back, you're going to start noticing things show up for you. It's going to be very hard for you to try to micromanage how things show up, right? We've had situations where the people we met, the spouses we have, the friends we have, we could not have micromanaged it to have created that situation. You can do the same thing about your career and allowing that to show up for you. But that only happens if you're willing to step back from the fear.
I love that. Well, first of all, I've known about EFT because I had a coach who worked with me for a while, and that was one of the many things in her bag of tricks. And it's very effective to get people to calm down because we in the metaphysical world, you talk a lot about your energy and
Mhm.
energetically where you are at, and fear is a very low vibration, and then on top of it, anxiety and all the things that may come up in addition to the fear could really keep you from actually seeing it's because I love that you say allow or attract, because that I believe in that. Even with love and relationships, I
Mhm.
always say you don't find love, you attract it.
Right?
But when you're in this really low vibration, you repel it because
Yes.
your actions, your behavior, your energy is repelling. It's like it feels off. And I mean, for those who are not woo woo, it's also true, as my friend, I always like to quote Dr. Aisha, who always used to say that, because there's a lot of science behind this. I mean, there are times where my husband will come home from work and his energy is so off, it just permeates the whole room. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, please step outside, come back in with this different, like, it's so obvious, right? And we are energetic beings and we can feel this. So I think that's super important to just calm yourself down using this EFT or whatever other modality.
Mhm.
I used to do a lot of meditation to calm
Mhm.
myself down when those moments would come up where it's like, oh my God, you got to start making some money because you got to pay bills. And oh my God, and a meditation really was very helpful for me. What advice would you give talking about like these people right now that are going through all these back and forth? You're fired, you're not fired, all the people that are dealing with that, and not just the government workers, but anybody in general.
Right.
What advice would you give them on how to manage that and cope with it and keep moving forward and creating opportunities for themselves?
Yeah, and it's very hard. I mean, I'm just going to be very upfront that it's like being thrown in the deep end of the pool. And if you're not used to meditating, you're not used to affirmations, and now you're being asked to do it under very serious conditions. But I'll say one of the easiest things, and something that my clients really gravitate towards, is a simple phrase that I say: start your phrase with, I'm open to the possibility that, fill in the blank. And don't get very hyper focused on a very specific outcome. You don't want to say, I'm open to the possibility that I won't get fired. That's not what you want. I'm open to the possibility that things will work out. Because sometimes, as we both know, being laid off from a job or dropping something that isn't working for you is the best thing, but you want that next piece to come quickly. And so we get hyper fixated on what we are losing, and we rarely are able to focus on what we are gaining. And as soon as you say, well, I'm open to the possibility, even if that possibility is 1% in your mind, it creates a space, it creates an opening for slightly different thinking. And that's more along the lines of what you were saying earlier. How do I make this work out? I have to make this work out. So, how am I going to make this next step work out? So I start with that phrase. I'm open to the possibility that, fill in the blank, things are working out. The next step becomes available or becomes clear. And then once you start noticing, and you will very quickly, once you start noticing things moving in that direction, I tell people pay attention to that and then add the next statement, which is a little bit stronger. I see evidence that. Oh, look, I got this person who said they were interested in whatever, my resume, or someone else who said, I introduced you to somebody. I didn't even know whether the two of you would be interested in talking to each other, but I sent you an email. I said, hey, I don't know where this might go, but I'd like to send you this contact. And so it's like, oh, look, I see evidence that my intuition is right, is on target. So I want people to start noticing not the big things. Fine, I get it. When you get a job, it's exciting. But the small steps that need to take place in order to get your goal, whatever that goal may be. And also, Arlene, I want to talk to you a little bit and have you share. People who are listening to us may be very interested in what matchmaking is all about, right? It's something that they may have been drawn to, but wouldn't even know what that entails. So, what do you think that people are, or what people in matchmaking need to have the characteristics or the desires that might make them good at this?
Well, thank you for that question. I want to begin by saying that the ideal business is one that solves a problem. And right now, we have a major problem in the world, a lack of connection, lower marriages, lower birth rates. And it's almost to a point where it's scary in some countries, the fact that this is not happening. And if the apps and technology were the answer,
Mhm.
then we wouldn't have this problem because there's plenty of technology available. So I firmly believe that matchmaking is the answer, but we need to create more matchmakers because I was just on a call today with about 70 or 80 matchmakers, one of which has a big business, big in terms of lucrative, but she was saying that she has six or eight matchmakers on her team and only took 30 clients the previous year. And they're a very, very successful matchmaking company, and they haven't even been around for very long. The women who started it have been in the business for a while. So my point is that if you have 8 matchmakers working with 30 clients, I mean, they're very high end and they're very high touch.
Mhm.
You got to consider that one matchmaker can only work with about maybe 15 people at a time, if pushing it.
Right.
If it's more than that, it's way too much. And so there aren't enough matchmakers to go around, and they're eliminating a lot of the issues that come up with these apps, like people corresponding for a year never meeting, or giving away all kinds of money to somebody sitting in Nigeria that you don't even know, because you're being groomed for that on these apps, right? The safety
Yeah.
aspect. Um, Also, just showing up, having someone do the vetting for you, running those background checks, making sure they are who they say they are. So they're not married, they're not this, they're not that. And my point is that this industry is on the verge of major growth because it's needed. Because I don't care how many matchmaking companies you have out there, there are not enough, and they are needed because people are struggling. And so I want to encourage anyone who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur to consider starting a matchmaking company, because it is a business and you have to run it like a business and have all the tools and the processes and everything else. But you're also very fulfilled when you are helping people, for one of the most important parts of their lives, which is their love life. So I'm very passionate about this, and I run a school for it because I feel like this is a very viable business for so many people.
Yeah, and I have to agree. When I decided to start my business, I didn't just jump into it. I actually got certified, and I would highly recommend that. Because really, as you're talking, what I'm hearing, somebody who's good at connection, somebody who's good at communication, somebody who people always go to for advice. Hey, what do you think? Because I think matchmakers have to do a little bit of tactful advice, maybe tone down this, or maybe bring up that type of thing. And I think that people who have that kind of characteristics would do well to kind of look at your program and to see what it is, because you'll be taking their skills, honing it, and also then adding the business component, which unfortunately we don't learn a lot of. You can even go to coaching school, but they don't teach you how to run a business, and that's what you do, which is very different and much needed actually.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely what I experienced when I went through my training, which I went through after I had already started a business. I felt that there was not a lot of business acumen in the training. It was very fast. It was like 12 modules online, and then if you had questions, and I wanted to do something very different because I do think that people need a lot more support than
Yeah.
12 weeks. And I also think that it should be a kind of a done with you where there's accountability, where you're learning and doing at the same time versus just here you go, figure it out. And then you're sitting home like, oh my God, what do I do next? And so I wanted to eliminate that in the program that I developed, which is a 1 year program, but it's not like, oh, it's you have to wait a whole year to get a client. No, it's 6 months to build your business strategically. And then the other 6 months is actually working with clients and continuing to develop the business and the consistency and all this stuff while you're getting that support and working with clients. So I'm very excited because I do think that this is a growing industry, and I think that a lot more people are going to seriously consider it. And now you go on LinkedIn, for example, and you see a lot of matchmakers on there. And there was a time where people were just telling me, I had one guy a few years back say, "Why are you posting this stuff here on LinkedIn? You should be posting this somewhere else." And then another woman jumped. I didn't even know how to react to it. And then later on, I was at a networking group where there were basically all women, and somebody said the same thing. She's like, "Why are you posting on LinkedIn? You should be posting on Facebook." And I'm like, this is serious business. This is the business of matchmaking. Like, people need to hear about this because they only think about Fiddler on the Roof. But this is a real viable business where you can be fulfilled, make your own hours, do your own thing, and also earn a good living. Um, what would you tell someone who's saying, okay, maybe this is the opportunity for me to consider
Mhm.
being an entrepreneur? Where do I begin?
Yeah, and so first and foremost, I would say there are two parts to entrepreneurship, and I think you will also agree. One thing that you were saying, you need the know how. The know how is independent of mindset, right? You need to understand what's the business, how do I run it, how do I price myself? And that's what I like certification programs like that, where like yours, where they focus on the business. I'm sure you're having these conversations with your coaches on
Mhm.
what to do, how to price yourself. That's invaluable. So I think something like that is really important. The second piece, once you have all of that, right, the second piece is, how are you showing up? So if you're taking this information and you're feeling confident and you're on fire, I can guarantee you it's going to show up in your results. You're going to see it, you're going to be energized by it, and all the things, the good things you think about with entrepreneurship. On the other hand, most of us are in the opposite direction. So most of my clients are women business owners who are really, really good at what they do. But the one thing that almost everybody doesn't like to do is sales. And guess what? You cannot grow a business unless you have sales, right? So that's kind of what my more recent focus is in the programs that I run, is about where's that lack of confidence on sales, because sales is all about worthiness and deservability, especially when you're a coach, like a matchmaking coach. You're selling you. And if you feel uncomfortable charging a particular price because of what I call your own money story. It feels uncomfortable. My family didn't spend that kind of money. Who's going to spend money on me? They're going to say it's too expensive. Guess what? That's your money story. I tell one of the most common things I used to hear is, well, what does the market bear? Like that's what I want to charge. Well, I'm like, okay, you can be at Tiffany and charge over there because obviously they have a market, or you could be at Claire's, and spend $10 for some trinkets. You've got to decide where you want to be. And actually, the decision is taken out of your hands because it's based on your worthiness and confidence. Somebody who has high confidence will not undercharge. Somebody who has low confidence can try to increase their prices, but they're not going to be able to get those clients because, like you said, the energy is so clear. It's off putting. You don't come across as being confident. And the person on the other side of the table, whether they believe in woo woo stuff or not, they're going to feel it and they're going to respond to it. So I think those two things go hand in hand for entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I love everything that you said, and I want to talk a little bit about sales, but going back to something you said before that when you first started, you needed to work on yourself and work through, and often I hear people say that they have like this imposter syndrome,
Yes.
and I think part of that is because they don't do the work on themselves.
Yeah.
And you're trying to teach something that you haven't achieved, or it doesn't feel real to you.
Yes.
And actually when I went into the business of matchmaking, part of the desire was to learn about relationships because I had been married for almost
Mhm.
17 years. It didn't work out. And I was dating my now husband. We've been together for almost 15 years now. And believe it or not, just that mindset of like, I want to walk my talk
Mhm.
has been huge in my relationship because I can navigate the rocky times. Like any marriage or any relationship, you're going to have to deal with that.
Mhm.
So embodying and learning and being authentic in what you're providing other people could be very helpful. Some of it could just be by training, but
Mhm.
if you're living it, that is huge. So to me, that was the way that I felt confident that I had a good relationship, and then I could, I'm not saying every matchmaker has to have a great relationship. Please, by no means do I mean that. But for me, that helped because I didn't have the school. I didn't go to school for matchmaking until I basically didn't because I just got certified in one day. So anyway, my point is that's very helpful to know and to embody so you don't feel like an imposter. But when we talk about sales, like because I had a lot of experience in sales in my previous career, I always knew for me sales was serving because you are offering something that someone needs and it's going to make their life better or make their work easier. You're serving, it's not hurting. You're not selling, you're not doing anything to anyone that they don't want, right? They're telling you this is my problem, and if you have the solution, you're saying here you go. Let me serve you. And there's an energy exchange. I'm going to do some work for you, you're going to pay me, and
Mhm.
that money to me is an energy exchange. So I always viewed it that way, and this is something that happens all the time. You're always
Mhm.
negotiating and
Mhm.
like there's always an exchange, right? Even in your relationships with your spouse or whatever, your children. But and I don't mean to say it in a transactional way. I'm just saying this is
Mhm.
just how it
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
And so if people move away from the idea that you're selling, so you're doing something to someone and you're hurting them, that mindset shift is like
Mhm.
all of a sudden everything opens up for you because now you're looking at things in a very different way. Now you feel like, oh my God, I spoke to this person who desperately needs what I have to offer, and they walked away and didn't get it. I failed them. I look at it.
So I agree with 100% with what you're saying, but I'll put it to you this way. I'm not good at math. My brother is really good at math, and he does not understand why basic math principles I don't get. He just doesn't get it, and I don't get his math principles. And that's how I think sales is. if you're not in that emotional space, people can't see it that way. And what tends to exacerbate the situation is if you're not in that emotional space, you're not making sales, which means you're not earning money, which means you're now in a place of desperation. And now every sales conversation has a strong agenda and emotion behind it. So it's even harder to get into this place of it being a conversation where somebody's approaching you because they have a need and you have a solution. And what I think makes it even harder from a metaphysical perspective, we attract everything. The people we attract are based on our own outlook and opinions on life, right? Life is a mirror. So
Yes.
we're in a place, let me step back. I was watching a 60-minute show about this young guy. He was in his 20s and he's selling high end cars and making, I don't know, $30,000-$40,000 in commissions. No, and nobody else in his dealership can match him. And when they talked to him, it was really about his belief that, yeah, I don't have to tell myself I don't have the experience. All these guys are at least 15 to 20 years older than me. I never went to school for any of this. He said, I come in every day and I say, you know what? I deserve this. I'm worthy of this. And that's the difference. Most of us have a conversation in our head as to why we don't deserve to be having this conversation, the sales conversation, and therefore don't deserve to get this money. I was having a conversation with somebody today about it, and I said, it's not about what you want for your clients. If they like your services, even if you're not happy with the full output, they want this. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about your money story.
Yeah.
And it's hard to separate our own money story, because then we feel like an imposter, we feel insecure, we feel all those kinds of things. So that part has to be worked on in order to be a successful business person, because otherwise you're constantly going to be hitting up against not kind of allowing sales and clients and the growth that you deserve.
100%. I used to do a lot of coaching way back when I was matchmaking. I was also coaching. And when we used to talk about mindset and helping people shift from their current beliefs to a new belief, and you alluded to this, I used to have them purchase, or I would send them an evidence journal.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the mindset shift was as simple as deciding that this belief is no longer serving the goals that I want. So I'm going to decide to change it for another belief that's actually more supportive, but not like in La La Land. I mean,
Right.
within reason, right? And so now when you make this decision, now you look for evidence. And every day the homework was, okay, we've changed the belief from,
Mm-hmm.
in the matchmaking where all the good men are taken to there are wonderful men out there and there's lots of opportunities for me. And I'm going to meet someone. And then you start your journal. Like there's wonderful men out there. Oh, look at so and so. She's married to a great guy. Let me write that down. And like observing, because we're so hyper focused on the negativity,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we don't have what we want,
Mm-hmm.
that we lose sight of all the wonderful things that are out there. And then when you actively seek to see those things that you think are not available, you start to notice them. And then you're creating new pathways in your brain even and starting to see more and more possibilities. So I'm curious how you work with your clients to get them from the mindset of no, I can't to oh, everything's available to me. I know you talked about one statement which I think is very powerful on
Mm-hmm.
how to talk to yourself. But are there any other exercises that you might want to share here
Yeah.
tonight?
So if you find, so I'm going to talk about things that you patterns that you've been dealing with a lot of your life, a big part of your life, whatever those patterns happen to be. Then using affirmations is kind of like looking for a needle in the haystack. It's not going to get a whole lot of movement in a longer term basis. So that's where I recommend tapping in EFT. Because what EFT does is we tap on our acupressure points, and as we're tapping, we're bringing up old stories, memories of where that belief got first attached, where you developed it. And what tapping does is it separates the emotion and the belief. So, say something happened and the belief was, this means that I'm not smart enough. And that makes you feel angry, sad, hopeless, helpless, whatever those emotions happen to be. Once you release the emotion from that particular story, now what happens is that belief doesn't have anything to attach itself to. There's no reason to hold on to that belief. So you start releasing beliefs from a subconscious level, because otherwise it's very hard to talk yourself out of a belief, because as soon as you get emotionally triggered, guess what? You're going to go right back into that old belief again. So for less serious beliefs that are holding you back, I would say use the affirmations, use meditation as well. That's also extremely effective. Deep breathing, all of that's effective. But when you see a pattern that you're noticing in every area in your life, it impacts you work wise, it impacts your confidence in your relationship, as it did for me. Like, it was multiple places that I was noticing this impact. That's where tapping became an invaluable tool, because it cuts out the beliefs and it goes straight to the heart of the situation, which is the emotion and the story that created the emotion.
Heard that you hold on to memories in your on your body, like your body.
Yep.
So is the tapping a way to release it? Is that what that's doing? I mean, not knowing, I've never
Right.
studied.
So the person who created tapping actually is an American, well, he's now passed away. He's an American psychologist, a therapist who studied ancient Chinese acupuncture. And what he realized, or maybe he learned from acupuncture, is that there are two things that happen. One is we have an emotion that's stuck in our body, and we have a physical sensation that is also part of it. So, for example, when you're tapping on your inner eye point, you're tapping on fear. And your fear center is not anywhere in your face. It's actually closer into, in your liver, your gallbladder. That's where we hold our fear. And so as you tap, one of the things I ask people is, where do you notice any tension, any tightness in your body? It's something that we use as a proxy, and it moves. So, for example, if you start off with a story that's making you angry and you're feeling it as this tightness in your throat because there are words that need to come out and you're not saying it. And then as we release anger, maybe underneath anger, there's sadness. What's going to happen is that emotion, that physical sensation is going to move from your throat because we release some of that emotion, and you'll find it in other parts of your body. Emotion and physicality go hand in hand. And that was one of the things he realized, that with traditional Western therapy, they're very good with the beliefs. They touch on the emotions, but they mostly ignore the physical sensation. And when we're stressed, we have all three. So you need a technique that addresses all three of them. So yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah, I mean, your physiology it's very powerful. Um, so you're doing EFT now. Did you write a book?
So I am an author in one of the books that comes out every year. It's called The Art of Connection. And so this year, the book, The Art of Connection, is about abundance. So I had contributed to some abundance quotes. What are some of the things? It's 365 days of abundance. So every day you can look at a particular quote and see how to apply that into your life.
I love that. And I love that because it's not, you kind of alluded to this, but affirmations never worked for me. Whenever I was in a stress situation, I just like it, it didn't feel real. It didn't,
Right.
it just never worked. I know for some people, they do hypnotherapy,
Mhm.
which is a lot more powerful, I guess, than affirmation. But for me, affirmations never worked.
The wrong way to do affirmations never work. There
Yeah.
is, I promise you, I absolutely promise you, there is a right way to do it. And when you learn how to do it the right way, you're going to notice a big difference. So just wanted to put that
Okay.
out.
Well, now I need to know what the right way is.
The wrong way is when people try to go for pie in the sky stuff.
Mm.
You have to, because that's what people think, that you need to have an affirmation that's, big and grand and all the rest of that. Exactly the opposite. You have to get your subconscious to slowly move up to that place, and I call it emotional laddering. So my way of working through affirmations, it's a process. We don't It's not a one time thing. And so you start with the emotion from where you are. You have to acknowledge at all times, you acknowledge your emotion from where you are, and we work on it, moving it one step up that ladder.
Which makes sense because I think people want to go from like depressed
Yes,
to like, you know,
right.
actualization. I mean, there's a step by step process. I was trying to figure out who was it, Abraham Hicks,
Abraham Maslow, yes. His,
who wrote the ladder of emotions, and it to me it makes sense. It's like you can maybe take two steps at a time, like literally when you're climbing up
mhm,
steps, you don't go from the bottom all the way up to the top. You
yep,
can maybe climb two or three at a time,
yep.
but yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
It's
because your subconscious is not going to respond that quickly. And the
mm,
name of the game is to get your subconscious to agree with the situation, because your subconscious is feeling so badly about the situation, you're stuck. But if you can get it to move a little bit at a time, and that's why I start with I'm open to the possibility. It's
yeah.
not about you achieving whatever. I'm open to the possibility that this might work out in some way or the other. I don't need to know why, I don't need to know how, but it might work out. And it has to be narrow. I mean, in the sense, it has to be small, not something big.
Who are the types of people that you're working with at this point in your business?
Lots of solo entrepreneurs who I would say are very also cerebral, analytical, logical. So my clients are coaches, doctors, lawyers, therapists, psychiatrists, even, and also other entrepreneurs. For example, marketing agencies, consultants. So people who are very good at what they do, but they are missing the part about how to feel good about themselves.
Hmm.
As women, we put on our face and we get out there and we look like we are slaying the world to everybody else. You know, when I was in my 40s, I told my mom about how much how much I struggled with the lack of confidence, and she never knew it. She couldn't understand that. She didn't even realize that that was actually the case, because we don't put that face out, right? We're not used to it. We're always used to kind of showing up in a very put together way. We have our accomplishments, but our accomplishments does not equal self validation. In
Hmm.
fact, I find from my group of clients, it's the opposite. The more we accomplish, the more we feel like an imposter because we're not agreeing with that accomplishment personally.
Yeah. And the sad part is that most of the times that you could feel the best about whatever you're trying to accomplish is in the journey, and sometimes people don't even stop to
Yes.
enjoy that journey and
Yes.
that goal and having that, because when you reach a certain goal you're like, okay, what's next?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
enjoy the journey. But most people don't do that because they're so in their heads and all the things that come with it. So that's interesting. So you're working primarily with solopreneurs, and these are people who are successful but still need that support, which makes a lot of sense because you hear of people who are uber rich and famous, and they're still struggling because, and it's not always therapy, right?
Right.
Because there's such a difference with therapy and dealing with trauma and all this versus like you know future forward and seeing things and having those mindset shifts, that it's a little different from therapy sessions.
Yeah, and what I do is a little bit of both. So part of it does include a lot of in the beginning. It's a lot of childhood trauma, and I use trauma with the small t, not necessarily big T traumas where little things keep happening on a regular basis and it builds up into something. So the first part of the way I work with people is that you got to be able to release some of that because you're not going to be receptive to anything more. The second part, which is the more interesting and exciting part, is once you're in a place that you're allowing things to show up for you, you're in a place where you feel like you deserve and you're worthy, then we get into tools for manifestation. How do we manifest? So I use Abraham Hicks's teachings on the law of attraction, the 3 steps to the law of attraction. How do you need to think? How do you need to feel when it comes to the law of attraction? What's working? What's not working? I use all different kinds of tools to make something that might feel very intangible to a lot of people, bring it to a practical place so that they have a tool when they're struggling in a particular area, they can start implementing it. So that's where the real magic comes, because now you're living life in synchronicity. I'm going to be talking to my coach. I work with my own coaches, right? And one of the things I'm going to be telling him, we're going to be meeting next week, I think it is. It's like how things are moving just smoothly. For once, things are just kind of flowing in all different areas of my life. And it all started with a few years back when I noticed I started thinking differently about myself. I couldn't quite identify why and how or what, but I felt different. And now everything around me, because, like I said, life is a mirror. So everything around me is mirroring that smoothness, that ease, and that flow that I feel about me.
Nothing better than being in flow because it just
Yeah.
I was like,
Sometimes it's exhausting.
I love it. I love it. Well, this is exciting, and I love that you're working with these accomplished people, and yet they're open to this mindset shift and the metaphysical stuff. Because often you get people that are very right brain, and then But I think when someone hasn't felt that fulfillment, even though they've accomplished this, that, and the other, like, let me just try something new, and then they come to find out that, oh, this actually works.
I am usually the person of last resort. All of my clients, almost all of my clients have been to therapy. They've done all kinds of other things and they've not accomplished what they were looking for. They thought that that was it, that this will make them happy, but it didn't, because it didn't focus on the inner stuff. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that people are rushing out to change their mindset. Not yet, anyway.
I love it. So, what is the best way to reach you? Where are you located? Do you work with people remotely or something, right?
Yes, so I work with people actually all over the world. And so the best way to kind of reach me is to check out my website, which is oberfeldcoaching.com. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I promote a lot of videos on what I call tools for resilience, right? That's something that practical tools you can start using. I also work with a lot of business owners on helping them with their sales success from the mindset perspective. I don't teach them a process. That's not my role. But when somebody gives them a process and it's not working for them, it's probably their mindset that's in their way. And just reaching out through any of those platforms if anybody wants to learn more about how to take their business to the next level.
I think it's great. And I have been watching your videos on LinkedIn and I love them. They're
Thank
very
you.
succinct, very powerful, and always pack a nice little message that I think will, make a difference in people's lives and businesses.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Maggie, thank you so much for being on the show. I think you're wonderful, and I'm excited that you're available to so many people out there that are really struggling. And it doesn't matter what you've accomplished or whatever you haven't accomplished, having that support, like you said, you have a coach. I always have coaches as well. A brain surgeon can't do surgery on himself. You always need somebody to help guide you and to just help you look outside of yourself. So I think it's wonderful the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And same here. I feel like when people have an ethical way of bringing business out like you do, it it creates a whole community ripple effect. So it's fantastic. Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, guys, there you have it. I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation and that you will tune in every week. We are live on social media on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then everything goes to podcast. So please check us out, like us, follow us, do all the things, and tune in for the next conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow matchmakers and friends. For more resources, training, and inspiration, visit lovepromastermind.com and follow us on social media. Remember, matchmaking isn't just a career, it's a calling. Let's keep building connections, changing lives, and growing together. Until next time, stay inspired and keep matching.